All right. So you'll notice that in Comp 2, these live sessions tend to be a little bit shorter. It's because really there's not a whole lot to like instruct you guys on. Instead, I like to orient you to what you're doing this week and kind of cover a little bit of last week and let you guys have at it, right? Because
Okay.
of course what you guys are doing in this class is it's much more research. If we were having this in person, we would be spending time doing the research together, maybe drafting together, doing proposals together. I like to treat Comp 2 much more like a workshop versus like giving you work to take home. But, given the circumstances, given this being a distance ed class, what I'll do is I'll try to front load all of this to you guys so you can have as much as you need in order to accomplish the next step in the process. So last week, you guys turned in your research questions, and those are by no means written in blood, right? You can refine them, you can change them as you're going along. But what I'm hoping that you do is that you're able to see what direction your paper should take. So Denise, since you're here and I hadn't seen yours, can I use yours as an example?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So where did it go? Ah, I see. Here we go. All right. So Denise. Oh, this is Cassidy's. I got to comment on Cassidy's, and she's not here. We won't look at hers together.
Mm-hmm.
So let me go back to Denise's. I commented on everybody's that had it done by last night, and so if somebody posted the past couple minutes, I haven't taken a look at it. I can't talk right now. I can't talk. Sorry. My oldest daughter has come back from Tennessee, and she's coming up trying to engage me in a conversation.
Oh.
I can't talk right
She
now.
wants her daddy time.
Okay, later, please, okay? Okay.
We get it.
Yeah.
Denise says, so my research will be is having children at an advanced age, maternal age, safe for women and their babies. That's a very good start of a question, right? And so what I said to Denise then was, I think it's a great start. You're evaluating, right? You're trying to determine if something's good or not. And that's basically an evaluation question. Is something good or not? Is something moral or not? Is something ethical or beneficial or harmful, right? Whenever you're trying to attach a specific quality of judgment that is, can be argued, you're moving from like the definition sort of paper to like, I'm trying to think of an example, like euthanasia or assisted suicide is a approved medical practice, right? That's a definition sort of argument, right? Whether you agree or not, you're defining it as such. But when you go into evaluation, you'd be saying it is an appropriate, right? Not an approved, because somebody's already approved it. Like in Oregon, assisted suicide is legal. So you wouldn't be arguing it's legal. It's already legal in a couple states. Instead, you would say something like it's an appropriate, or it's a correct, or it's a moral sort of judgment. And when you're layering on those sort of personal feelings, personal viewpoints, you're getting into evaluation. And so I like that question because it's definitely high level thinking, right? Level 6 of that. Remember that pyramid I showed you guys? That pyramid with Bloom's taxonomy. Level 6 is evaluation. And so if you're asking those kinds of questions, you're asking very, very critical questions. But my points to Denise were, what is safe? What do we mean by safe for mothers? Do we mean that the mortality rates are low enough to justify it? Do we mean that breastfeeding is fine? Do we mean that that will help them prevent breast cancer later on? Because we know, of course, that breastfeeding and breast cancer have correlations. Or are we talking about safe for babies as well? And so I asked her to focus on one or the other.
Right. And if I can cut in, I'm sorry. My focus was on, is it safe for mothers, in the sense that we know that women that get pregnant at a very later age are always going to be a high-risk pregnancy. How high of a risk is it for being a first-time mother? Because it's not the same for a mother that already has, born children. There are risks, but it's not as risky maybe as a first-time mom.
Very good. So you're asking a very, even a more of a specific question. And so if I use a text box here, this might even help. Is having children for the first time at an advanced age safe for women, right? And so then when we even narrow it even more. And so how do we begin the process? So I'm going to use Denise's to kind of start thinking about what I want you guys to do this week. What are some things that Denise and Kathy, Rebecca, Gogo, you guys can all answer here as well. What are some things that Denise would need to consider in a paper like this?
The health of the woman to begin with, baseline health.
Baseline health, very good. When we say baseline health, what kind of things are we talking about?
I mean, baseline health history, I guess, more so.
Very good.
History of, heart disease, diabetes.
Right. Family history. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Good.
Yeah.
What else?
Her work. I mean, is she in this? What does she do for a living? Is she in a stressful environment?
Right. Well, we can also take into consideration, because it's not just the mother that contributes to the to the baby part. It's there's a father as well. What family history does the father bring to the table? Is there any anything that might be genetically what do you call it? Affecting mom and father in order for procreation, and then I mean, we can learn forever and ever on
And these are important things to start bringing up, because what you're going to see in this week's work is you're going to see something that's called emerging topics. And these are the kinds of things that need to be discussed in a larger paper. So of course, this is your large goal, right? So all together, everything is going to center around this question.
Right.
But then you're going to have these subtopics, and you need to pick what you need to discuss, what you don't need to discuss, how much to dedicate to certain things, how much to dedicate to certain other things. So something that came to my mind, for example, are we talking about, like, for example, natural fertilization methods, or are we talking about like in vitro? Right, because you have a lot of single women nowadays in their mid-40s who are, looking to get pregnant. Maybe they're recently divorced. Maybe they've never been married. And they're just like, bump having a husband. There's this in vitro thing working out now. And so they can look at as that as a possibility. And is that a safe possibility?
Right.
Given advanced maternal age. Something else too is I think we need to define what advanced maternal age actually is. So it might be good to look at some medical journals as to what are we talking about for age range. Are we talking about, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I believe it was 40 and above.
Okay, good. So that's interesting. I was going to say, are we talking about anything like pre-menopause, or is it like 40 to 45 or something along those lines?
Right. 40. Yeah, it's 40 years old.
Okay, good.
That they start considering as a high-risk pregnancy.
No, I think now it starts at 36.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it's 36. She just turned 30. Like when you turn 35, you're already in like
the high risk category.
IRIX profile or something. When you hit 35, you get pregnant. Yeah.
That's interesting, because 36 is still a young age.
I know. It's so weird. You see 40-something years African women get pregnant, not one time, two times, and it was so surprising when she turned 35. They said she's gonna have like IRIX. Nothing is wrong with her, but they still send her to like specialty doctors.
Interesting.
I know.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that. My mom had me at 36, and that was in the 80s. So
yeah, my mom had me at 35, and that was back in the 70s.
Yeah, so I wonder what they would have thought back then. Like, boy, this isn't high risk. This is like death. Like what would that have been for them back then? I don't know, but that's interesting. So don't take Gogo's word for it. Not that she's necessarily wrong, but like look up your research, right? So do your research. What do doctors or what do medical professionals define as advanced maternal age, right? And so you'll want to establish that. And so we established some questions. I accidentally erased them. Sorry, that was an accident. So these are different factors to start considering. You may also want to begin asking yourself, what minor questions do you need to ask? And so these don't necessarily need to be argumentative questions. They need to be like facts that you're going to lay out. And so I like to call them leading questions. So for instance,
what herbal supplements might be good for the mom at that age?
Okay, so that might even be good. You may want to first establish if it is.
If it is.
So for example, what doctors suggest, or what do doctors suggest is too advanced right?
Okay.
And so you might have to establish some things like that. This doctor says this clinic says this research study suggests that, you know, rates of miscarriage and so forth are this.
Oh,
right?
oh, I see what you're getting at.
And so what we're establishing basically in these emerging ideas are even, and in these leading kinds of questions, are the kinds of questions that you would need to answer in order to kind of trace your argument down. So what do doctors suggest is too advanced? If under the too advanced categories, you know, what treatments help women have a safe pregnancy? And so that might be something like supplements. That might be something like, even for instance, care. What kind of care are the women receiving? Is it weekly visits, you know, as of like second trimester versus third trimester? Or, you know, you might begin thinking about what kinds of regimens in terms of medicine or visitations are encouraged, right? And so I'm not an OBGYN by any means, but, you know, we've had 3, so I've been through the experience a couple of times. Not that it makes me a professional, right? But what kinds of things are suggested? And so as you're getting the research, start making notes, right? What I often encourage my students to do in this paper in particular is to have like a notebook or a journal, something where you can document just stuff that you're finding. And if you find an article that you're interested in, or even a paragraph of an article, print that paragraph out and stick it in that notebook. Or if you think about a question, stick it in that notebook. Or if you're sitting in your own class, a different class, not mine, and something is mentioned in that class, write it down and in that notebook. And that way you have this ongoing research log of the things that you're gathering in order to create this larger paper that you're producing in this class. Okay, so let's switch gears and actually look at the proposal that I'm going to have you guys do. So this is the sample proposal I have, right? I have you guys completing. And basically, if you do the entire proposal correctly, you'll get full credit, right? Let's see, hang on. It says it's paused. Why is it paused? I'm trying to resume the share.
I can see you.
Let me see. It was, hang on, there we go. There we go. It was saying it wasn't sharing this for some reason.
Okay.
So you'll see in the week 3 material, there's a template. This is just a sample proposal, so I've filled in the blanks a little bit, okay? So I'm going to explain to you guys just some notes here. And so these are some notes on a paper that I've been playing with as I've been going along with the Composition 2 classes, not just at EVCC, right? Because many of you guys will focus on medical topics. This focuses on something much more broadly. So delete the writing in blue and start your own text, right? So topic, in Denise's case, topic maternal age and, you know, justifying maternal age or overly, you know, overly risky pregnancies at a certain age or something along those lines. Just a very, very broad topic of hers. Here's mine, gendered standards of clothing choice. So I made a couple notes about some things that led me to my topic. All I need from you guys is the research question, okay? All you have to turn in is just the question, nothing else. All I have here, I have all these notes in order to kind of show students who are struggling with this topic how I got to my question. So for instance, after reading this short story, I was interested in societal standards of dress. This short story is about girls going into a grocery store in their bikinis, and like the manager has an absolute fit, right? Because of course, you know, he doesn't want women to be exposed and this and that, right? And so he has a fit and one of his employees gets really angry and leaves. Kind of a famous short story. But based on that, my reading of that, I ask, why do some individuals challenge gender standards in clothing choice? In other words, those girls were doing that. People do that all the time, right? We often challenge various standards in our clothing choice. And that's kind of where I came from this reading. In a similar way, something that you've read or something that you've watched may have triggered this question that you're getting to. You don't need to tell me the backstory. All I'm interested in is your refined, how you've gotten to the new research question that you've gotten to. It could be the same as last week. Maybe your question was spot on. Maybe we've made some slight tweaks to it in order to help refine it a little bit. So topic, research question, rhetorical modes. So we've practiced quite a few in this class. We talked about exemplification, problem solution, and all that. You've started kind of playing with evaluation and causal analysis. What I'm going to encourage you guys to do is identify the modes that you need. In other words, a builder who's about to build a house needs to determine what kind of tools the team is going to need. So they're going to need scaffolding. They're going to need, you know, a bulldozer. I don't know, right? They're going to need cranes for a large, you know, if it's some sort of larger menu structure. In other words, you too, we want you to identify what kinds of things you're going to need. So for instance, Denise already mentioned that she needed evaluation, but what other kinds of topics might she need? What kind of other rhetorical modes might she need? Well, we talked about natural birth versus like or natural fertilization versus in vitro.
Compare and contrast.
Yeah, there'll be a certain compare and contrast element to a portion of her paper. Her whole paper will be evaluation, but there's going to be these spots elsewhere. What else? If she's trying to talk about potential treatments or visitations as ways to ensure a healthy pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So she might be using what there?
It's not evaluation. It's
suggestions, i.e. solutions.
Yeah, possibly. So problem, we have a clear problem, right? You have this high risk pregnancy. You're looking for solutions. Very good. You might be thinking about examples of things that the woman can do in order to ensure she has a healthy pregnancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have all different kinds of rhetorical modes. Yeah, it's going to be one mainly, the main one, but then there's going to be multiple smaller ones as well. So see if you can identify what the smaller ones are. I always like my students to think about related disciplines. Now, of course, all your papers are going to be dealing with things like nursing, but can you think about other topics? So Denise or others, what other disciplines or what other areas of study are involved here?
In the, where are you? Related disciplines?
Related disciplines, yeah.
Let's see. Related disciplines, nurse. Oh, you mean nursing disciplines to the?
I mean subjects besides nursing, because the reason I have you guys do this is because you're going to begin gathering research, and you want to be on the lookout for journals. So, for example, okay, good. So health education, maybe good. What else?
Patient teaching.
Good. I was thinking obstetrics, right? Obviously.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And even gynecology.
Midwifery.
Midwife, okay.
Good.
Pediatrics even.
Very good, because you're talking about the health of the child too. Those,
right?
So those are the ones that came. Nutrition, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Good, nice. The reason I mention this is because you want to be on the lookout next week when you're starting to gather research. Next week's a big week because you got to gather a lot of research, right? So kind of keep that in mind.
We'll be done with farm.
Well, hey, you're welcome that I accidentally planned it that way. No, but you're going to have a lot of research this week. This week will be fairly easy with the proposal. This won't take you terribly long. But if you finish early and you have time, you want to begin the research process for next week.
Good.
So if you see the American Pediatrics Journal, right, that might be a perfectly fine journal, even though you're a nursing student, right? Because you could use that journal as a possible area of research, or something within obstetrics, or something within patient teaching. In other words, these begin to be your keywords of what you're going to look for, right? We mentioned the emerging ideas. Some of these might be questions, some of these might be statements, but these will help you kind of discuss the topics of what you might be looking at. Notice my comment here, you can delete these comments. This doesn't need to be a comprehensive list of everything you're gonna be looking at, right? You don't have to like mention 10,000 things that you might be talking about. I do like to see at least 3 or so of things that you know you have to cover in the paper. And you might see that I'll add some ones as well, because these will be things that I feel you absolutely have to cover as well. Then we're going to begin the abstract, and you guys started an abstract last semester with the problem solution paper. That was the only paper you had to write an abstract with. In this class, we're going to have you start an abstract, and the abstract will basically be your paper in a very, very, very brief. And so remember those 3 questions, right? What's your argument? So Denise, her argument might be something along the lines of, you know, women 42 and older should, you know, seriously consider not, you know, having a child because of these particular reasons, something along, I'm spitballing here, right?
Mm-hmm.
How does she make her argument? She makes her argument using research from the American Pediatric Journal, the Council on Obstetrics, something along those lines, right? The American Medical Association, and so forth, right? She also makes her argument by setting up criteria and evaluating the decision using the criteria. I'm looking at where our rhetorical modes are. I already deleted them. But of course, evaluation sets up criteria too. We'll talk about that when we get to outlining and so forth. And finally, why does this argument matter? Well, obviously, lots of women don't want to get pregnant in their early careers. They want to get pregnant maybe when they're more financially secure. Mm-hmm. Sadly, people aren't necessarily financially secure until they're in their 40s, if ever.
Right.
And so on.
Well, women might be also looking for a secure mate too.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And so maybe that husband they had when they were 21 kind of turned out to be a loser, right? And so they don't necessarily want to have that same person again. Yeah, good.
Lots of variables, lots of, you know.
Absolutely. And then your thesis, and this is a very tentative thesis, right? Very, very, very tentative. I give you a sample thesis here. I use the while and although, so while ultimately sort of thesis. This is setting up a causal analysis. So my example is, while there are many reasons for people to express gender norms in dress and clothing choices, ultimately people desire to express individuality, right? The clothes that we pick is a matter of our individual choice. And doing so through clothing is one readily available option for such expression. Very, very basic thesis. If I were writing this for a graduate level class, the professor would sink it. And even if this were a student example, I would certainly make some suggestions to it. But it gets me seeing a couple things. One, what are you arguing, right? Mm-hmm. And 2, how are you arguing it? What are you doing? And in this case, this is doing a root cause, right? The person's trying to tell me what's the cause of individuals' choice in like gendered clothing. Mm-hmm. And so in a similar way, I should see what you're going to try to argue, and I should also see what it is that you're going to be doing, how you're going to be making that argument in some way.
Okay, not like not the solution, but the actual argument.
Right, and that may not necessarily be a solution, right? Because you're not necessarily writing a problem solution paper. Mm-hmm. Okay. So your paper may be evaluating it as good or possibly as a bad decision, right? Okay. And so you're not necessarily doing a problem solution paper, so there's not necessarily a single solution. The argument may be what you're trying to convince your readers of. Remember that an argument in college writing is not just you yelling and screaming. It's what you want your reader to think, do, or feel differently.
Okay.
And so what are you trying to inform them of? You could inform them of facts, but then beyond the facts, what do you want them to do with those facts? How should that change their behavior, or change their thoughts, or change their larger support about something? Okay, well, let's finish up with your other activity. And some students, again, like to do this activity first because you can see some samples. These are all different proposals from different classes that students have completed for me. So these are not necessarily in medicine. I think maybe one of these is a medical-oriented topic. What I want you to do is look at these 5 proposals, and they're all of varying qualities. I didn't pick 5 A topics. I didn't pick 5 F topics. I picked some students who are doing with some great ideas and some that have some sort of like weak sort of proposals. So what I want you to do is look at these 5, mm-hmm. and I want you to order them. Which one do you think is strongest? Which one do you think is all the way down to which one do you think is the weakest? So if you look at our roundtable discussion, what you guys are going to do in this particular discussion, here it is. is rank the 5, right? Rank them with their title. So just give me the title, otherwise I won't know. If you say number 1, I don't necessarily know what number 1 is. So tell me what the title is, tell me the strongest, and tell me the weakest. And then provide a brief explanation of why you think this one is the strongest. And bear in mind, don't just give it feedback saying that it was written the most grammatically correct. What I'm more interested in is not the grammar. What I'm interested in is the ideas. Proposals are really valuable because they can see basically what you're going to bring to the table. So you have 5 examples. For some of them have very, very strong ideas being presented. Some of them don't necessarily have very strong ideas presented. They're kind of like just superficially discussing topics. And so spend a little bit of time and get an idea about which ones are really advancing argumentative and interesting topics, ones that are, remember what we talked about last week in the materials, authentic, specific, relevant, those kinds of questions, and which ones are actually hitting on those. So for example, let's say I say targeted protest is number 1. Okay, targeted protest number 1, I think it does well because of X, Y, and Z, right? And so number 2 is this one on rebelling adolescence. Here we go. And I think this one is number 2 because of X, Y, and Z. Next, number 3, and so on and so forth. And there's no one right answer here, by the way. These students all turned out fine. They all passed Comm 2. But they didn't all necessarily have the best papers. And so what I want you guys to really think about is what ideas are being advanced, what are the most authentic, what are the most specific, what are the most relevant, and hopefully I'll give you an idea of what to do and what to avoid doing as well. One final thing in the discussion board, after you tell me which one you think is the strongest and the weakest and why, give a little feedback on each one. So for example, if we're looking at this targeted protest one, what does it do well? What does it need help with? This one, paper proposal 2, right? Rebelling adolescence. What does it do well? What does it need help with? And avoid just superficial things like grammar, right? We're not really concerned about lower order concerns, but use the abstract, use the thesis, use the emerging ideas. Those are really the key things to be looking at. Some people like to do that first because that gives them an idea of really what I'm looking for. You're going to get a sense that 1 or 2 are clearly better than the other ones. And so the question is then, how could the ones that are not necessarily as strong improve? And like I said, your proposal, don't stress about it. If you do everything, you're going to get full credit. But the more work you do into the proposal, the more thinking you put into it, the more time you ask those emerging sort of ideas and emerging questions, the stronger your proposal is going to be in the end.
Should we be using our own paper to gear this proposal so that we can use it more down the road, or are we just making stuff up here?
You mean the proposal for this week? The proposal
Yes.
I'm having you turn in?
Yep.
No, that's your paper. Yeah,
Okay,
okay, that's your paper. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's not a fake one. That's not a
All
fake
right,
one.
got it.
Yep. Yeah.
Clarifying.
No. These are all fake ones. They're not ones that are like for this class. They're ones from previous classes that I've had.
Got it.
And so I always ask my students if I can use examples. Like I have an in-person class, I'll say, who doesn't tell me, at the beginning of the semester if I can't use your examples in the future. And so these are all from, I want to say these are from last summer, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So this is a summer class that I taught in person back in Tennessee before we moved when I was teaching full-time in Tennessee.
Gotcha.
Okay, well, that's all I have tonight. Just if you want to do the paper proposal exercise first because you get to see them, that's perfectly fine. There's a little bit of optional resources here you can look at. This is a LibGuide from USC about how to write a proposal. I like these common mistakes. I really encourage you to take a look at those. Failure to be concise, being all over the map. That's possible too, right? People want to cover, all of science and medicine in a single topic, but I don't think that's going to be your guys' issue. You guys are all very focused. So stay if you have any questions, and if you want to look at your proposal or if you want to look at your discussion board one-on-one, we can do that too. Otherwise, I will see you guys next Monday, And next Monday, like I said, we will begin the research process. And so this is a big week because you're going to have to gather lots of research. All right. Have a great week.
Okay.
Thank
sounds
you.
good.
Have
Thank
a good
you.
week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello.
Hey, Gogo.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm good. I'm just trying to the topic that I gave, you were saying it's kind of a little bit broad. So I was trying to see if I can now what I can narrow it down to that can possibly, because I was looking at the birth control, because I already have like the 3 different points that I was gonna look at, like for working class women mostly, because it's one thing that, how am I supposed to say, like when I was going to high school, we never get educated about birth control. I know out here it's like you can get it like with insurance for free and everything, but over there like we don't have like no insurance. Like when you go to the hospital, you pay after government subsidize, you pay out of pocket. So like birth control and like all they ask you to do is just abstain. So I was just trying to see like how I can narrow it down instead of having like being all over the place.
Yeah, let me see. Let's look at your topic here. I'm trying to pull it up right now,
Okay.
and that way we can look at it together. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so why is birth control important, right? Yeah, and so my immediate answer was to become more narrow, because we most people know it's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, if you wanted to look at in a much more specific context, for example, many West Africans may not necessarily think it's important. I don't know. Do West Africans feel it's important or not?
So if they get the knowledge about it, they're like a lot of people don't know the importance of like birth control. That's why people keep having like 10, 11 kids.
Yeah,
If they don't want to have kids, that means they have to abstain from sex. There's no like in between point that
yeah, yeah.
pretty much, and you can see kids just being out of high school and being pregnant
Mm-hmm.
because they don't.
In fact, I've actually read different things about South Africa, for instance, and how like condoms, for example, are associated with witchcraft or different things like that, right? So men won't use condoms, and in these studies have not been about birth control, but they've been about people passing AIDS to others,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah, because
so
people are even ashamed to go purchase it.
yeah,
They look at you in a certain kind of way because Sierra Leone is like half Muslim and half Christian. So like it's kind of like they feel like it's a taboo for them to go to the store and get something like that even.
and so if you wanted to look at more like epidemiological aspects, as opposed to like more of like the sort of US audience, approach it from more of an epidemiological perspective, in that you're studying public health in Africa or in West Africa or something along those lines. And so if you do that, you begin to ask yourself something along these kinds of lines. And I don't want to just feed you questions, but you might start thinking about problem solution sort of topics. Or you might think about causal analysis. In other words, what's causing the hang up? What's causing the problems in giving women access to birth control in X, Y, and Z?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I see where you're coming from because
You might
as
also go ahead.
like I'm trying to see if you're trying to say like what causes the problem because like let me just say like um religious purpose is that like
Sure, religious people, but I mean, religious people are in the U.S. as well,
okay.
and yet birth control is still pretty common and easily accessible here. I lived in Korea for years, and birth control in Korea is like Advil. You just pick it up at the store, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have to have a prescription in Korea. Here you have to have a prescription, and it's very complicated for some women, especially if they don't have insurance.
Yeah.
But in Europe, none of that, right? Europe, first of all, it's they can go to a doctor anyways. But in Korea, you just go up to the counter at the pharmacy and ask for it, and they give you however much you want. In fact, we had a friend who was leaving Korea, and she didn't have insurance in America, and so she asked for 1 year of supply, and they just they just handed her 12 boxes of pills.
Oh, wow.
Whereas that would never happen here. Like you
Yeah.
could never get that.
Yeah, even with insurance, they only give you like 3 months.
Yeah, at the
Then you
very
have to go
most.
back. Okay. I will read more about it.
So that might be topics. If you don't want to talk about Africa, if you want to talk about the U.S., you could certainly explore something along the lines of why the U.S. requires doctor's visits, whereas other developed countries don't.
Okay.
So there's a certain compare and contrast paper there. Yes, birth control is accessible in both in different countries, but why in the U.S. is it more difficult to get? You could approach a political topic. So birth control has been challenged by many states. So certain employers have said, well, we don't feel that we should offer birth control because we're a Catholic hospital, or we're a Catholic institution, or something along those lines. Hobby Lobby is a famous example.
Okay. I'll keep reading into that and see when I go to work today. I'll look it up and read and see which one.
And so you might just start off with Google, right, and type in birth control, and then put in controversy.
Okay.
Right, and you will see all kinds of topics related to various birth control issues. One thing I would encourage you to do: pay very close attention to what you click. So Pro-Choice America is going to have a very clear political agenda, right? I don't know what KHN is, right? And so you may want to spend time looking at very clear articles that you know are credible, like the New York Times, for example. Planned Parenthood may not be bad. What people think about Planned Parenthood is not the case. Planned Parenthood's #1 job is not abortions, it's birth control. And so you might be able to look at just some topics that will help you get a sense of different topics in this field that you might be interested in.
Okay, I'll do that tonight so I can get it situated.
Then you could also, of course, use ProQuest as well. But ProQuest is not just easy reading. You have to be very focused.
I know you have to. I tried, because when I'm at work, I have time from 2 a.m. to 5. Let me say 2 to 4:30. I have time, but you have to be so focused. I'm okay.
Yeah, it's very hard to be focused because these articles are comprehensive studies of topics, right? And so I wouldn't start with ProQuest until you have an idea of what you want to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, and Google is a perfectly fine way to start because you'll be able to get a sense of different topics that are related to the idea that get you going, get you interested. Adolescent and contraception, right? So some young girls are prescribed contraception. Or doctors. Should doctors be able to give young children these without having the consent of their parent?
Of their parent.
You follow me? These are argumentative topics that are very common.
That's true. Okay, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. I hope that helped.
Yes, it does. So now at least I know what and different directions that I can look into.
Sure. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you have, and that's the thing. If you mention birth control, you have a million topics. The question is, you are in a universe. Which planet in the universe do you pick?
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay.
All right.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
My pleasure. Have a good evening at work.
Bye.
Bye.